Cinemodities, late night movies with Rob and Zack. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities, where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, abnormal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally these projects gel. Most times they crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Zack.
And I'm Rob. And I am happy to announce once again here on Cinemodities we have a first. So we are breaking away from our usual structure. We are taking a dip out of the Dean Norris series to talk about something that you may or may not think about on a regular basis. Zack and I come from different worlds on this one. I would say this is somewhat of a Zack choice, but we are talking about the Titanic. I guess everybody already knows that, since they've heard us talk to Ryan about this. But yes, we are talking about Titanic sinking the myths. So, Titanic. Zack, where do we start with this? I don't even know where to start with this.
Oh, I think we know where to start. There was a ship named Titanic. Jack and Rose fell in love. There was not enough room on the door, foolishly. That was the first example. See, what's the opposite of man spreading? That was woman spreading. It's because of Rose's woman spreading that Jack died. So see, ladies, that man gave his life for her in more ways than one.
Is that Titanic canon, that the Jack and Rose thing actually happened?
If it's not, it should be.
Okay. Well, yes. We have to talk about, if we're talking about the Titanic, we're talking about Titanic sinking the myths. We're talking about that movie quite a bit. We have to talk about the Titanic in general. I think that this is something that, of course, I want to talk about because, like I said, Zack and I come from different worlds. I don't really know anything about the Titanic. The Titanic isn't something that wildly interests me, I would say. I'm aware of it. I know the general story of it. But polar opposite, Zack is a huge fan. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yes, I consider myself an amateur expert on the Titanic. My father would have this saying of, I've forgotten more than you'll ever know about X. I think I fall into that category when it comes to Titanic. I think I've forgotten more about it than most people will ever know. And unlike most of our generation, I think Rob's going to make this term very well known, or he probably has at this point, Titanic deniers. much like how there's Holocaust deniers, there's a whole generation of people out there that think the Titanic is a fictional story. And I guess it's some sort of quasi fable to sit there like to explain class divides and just the hubris of mankind.
Yes, that is you're jumping into one of my points right off the bat. I love it, Zack. Titanic deniers. Of course, when Zack first came to me and said we were going to talk about the Titanic to an extent on our show, I had to do some research. And as I'm doing my research, I have the thought, well, if there's all this research saying that the Titanic happened, where are the people who are denying it? And I'm baffled by this concept, but I shouldn't be, right, Zack? If basically there's anything, people will deny it. I think that's just been proven by the humans at this point.
There's two rules when it comes to the internet, folks. One, if it exists, there's pornography of it. And two, if it exists, somebody is claiming it did not exist.
Do the people who claim it didn't exist still look at the porn of it, though?
I don't want to know the answer to that.
That's a deep question. It's going to take us many episodes to answer that one. But yes, the Titanic. Zack and I come from different worlds, and I think we should start right off the bat, especially because I have some questions for Zack because of this, about the Titanic in the media and popular culture. I am, once again, baffled by this, but I shouldn't be, that people are still talking about the Titanic, that there is such a movie, like I've said before, Titanic, Sinking the Myths, coming out so recently about the event that happened more than 100 years ago. I think if you ask the common person about the Titanic, they're going to say the James Cameron movie. Would you agree with that, Zack, or do you have a pushback on that?
No, James Cameron's kind of, or I call him Jimmy C. Jimmy C has the monopoly on Titanic lore at this point. I would imagine he will for the foreseeable future.
I think there's basically Hollywood isn't going to make another Titanic movie. I feel like the time limit is going to go on for quite some period. Like, not just 50 years, maybe 100 years. It's going to take a long time for them to even think of or understand what it would mean to remake the Titanic, right? Because how do you remake something like that was so popular for so long?
I don't know if you could remake it in the sense of retell James Cameron's specific tale of it. I know since his film, there have been numerous TV series that like have been trying to do things with it. But I don't think I think people now have I think the idea of Titanic is both romanticized in a literal and figurative way. One, the whole idea of this ship that sunk on its maiden voyage is romanticized. And then two, there's the idea of this a love story being tied to Titanic. Like, you think of Titanic and it's automatically romance. And I don't think you're ever going to, again, who knows, the way the current generation is going between eating Tide Pods, snorting condoms, they might eventually, the third thing on their list might be de-romanticize Titanic, so who knows. But I agree with you. For the foreseeable future, you'd be hard pressed to make anybody to give somebody a lot of money to do another proper Titanic film.
Yes. And even though we're not talking about Titanic or the Titanic, whatever the name of James Cameron's movie is.
Jimmy C.
Jimmy C. Yeah, I don't know. Well, can I call him Jimmy C?
Yes, he's Jimmy C to everybody.
Oh, okay. So Jimmy C. His Titanic film. I'm just going to get it right out there while we're on the topic. I am not a fan. I do not enjoy this film because of the romantic aspect. It falls into one of the traps that I always feel media and stories do. Hey, look at this really cool idea we have. Let's jam romance in there. Just focus on the cool idea. That's what I like. So I'm not a fan of that movie. The last time I did see it, to be fair, was when you had to watch it on like 16 different VHS tapes. Do you remember that period, Zach? You probably have the 16 VHS tapes.
I have the 16 VHS tapes. I love my 16 VHS tapes.
Yes, and I know exactly the part.
I know the exact part in the movie where you have to put the second VHS tape in.
Oh man!
I can tell you right now the exact moment you have to put the VHS tape into the thing.
Is that your favorite moment?
No, but it's ingrained into my mind. I'll never be able to forget it.
Okay, Zach, what is it? What's the moment?
It is.
Well, I believe you may get your headlines, Mr. Ismay.
And a little thing, like, and the screen fades to black, and a little image says, "Please insert tape number 2 into your VCR player."
Is there a ding? Is there like a ding? Turn the page. Oh,
there's no ding. Turn the page, unfortunately.
Okay, so yes, I think it's fair to say, Zach, you are a big fan of this movie.
Yes. I am getting my flaming torch and pitchfork as we speak, and I'm heading to Colorado. Yes, I'm going to burn your place of residence to the ground over that comment.
And I'm sure you have many more followers to support you and your love of this movie than I have to support my I don't know, general neutrality leaning on the dislike of it. So yes, James Cameron's movie, Jimmy C.
Jimmy C.
Once again, I see. I've never known him so formally. I'm gonna have to get used to that. And so Zach and I are on different sides of this. It's insanely popular though, and like we said, it's the king of Titanic media. And that's what I think of it as. Every time I hear the Titanic, I'm usually hearing about that movie. And when I was doing my research for this, I kind of had the thought, well, with something that's so popular, why have, at least in my perception, our culture let this become so funneled into such a small number of categories? We got like the Titanic research, the Titanic documentaries, and then we have James Cameron's Jimmy C's movie. Where else is it? Where's our someone has to travel back in time to stop the Titanic from hitting the iceberg, right?
I'm pretty sure that has to be an Outer Limits episode. I'm
or
almost
like
90%
a Doctor Who episode or something, right?
He does something. Oh yeah, there is a Doctor Who episode. It's not the Titanic itself. He goes into the future and finds like a spaceship that's called the Titanic, and he has to stop it from sinking or crashing to Earth. That actually is a Doctor Who, and it's actually a pretty good episode. Oh god, who's in it? Oh my god, Kylie Minogue's in it for some really odd reason.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's there. Like, we have these stories of the Titanic, but I feel like those aren't as widely received or popular as what we kind of know as the Titanic, as the movie and the research. like kids shows. They have motifs of maybe not current events, but historical events, or both. And I don't know. I don't really think of any of them as ever using the Titanic. There's never really that backdrop. And that's just really weird to me that it's so kind of ingrained in our culture as the movie and the actual event. So where else have you seen the Titanic? I think that's something I wanted to pick your brain about. You being much more aware of the Titanic, or when you see it, you're just like, oh, that's something I'm interested in. Whereas maybe I would write it off as the movie, not understanding what they're referencing. Are there any other Titanic things that have really stood out to you other than the movie?
I think it's really hard because the Jimmy Cease film is really the film that kind of gets everybody, I guess, of the modern era sucked into it. Because again, it's just the idea. Again, it's probably I know Rob doesn't like the movie for its romantic plot, but I think it's the most accessible way for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Rob sees it as probably its biggest detriment, yet it's probably the easiest way to get people on board. My favorite Titanic story, again, I'm probably repeating this, is that I saw the film 5 times as a 5-year-old. I was in kindergarten at the time, and the teacher in the administration at the public school I went to at the time wanted to put me on ADD medication. And my mother's response was, he doesn't have ADD, period, but he sat through Titanic 5 times voluntarily. He said, Mom, I want to see, Mommy, I want to see this. And then said that 4 more times after the first time and sat in the seat for 3 hours and 15 minutes. My mother tells me she covered my eyes when Jack is drawing Rose naked. And that's what it is. Like I said, no, I've always been drawn to Titanic. I think if there was a coffee table book about the Titanic that was published in late 97, early 98, I'm convinced I own it.
Okay.
One of my favorite Titanic stories, Rob probably didn't hear this story, but in high school, during my senior year spring break, when everybody's out getting high and drunk and overdosing and catching like 6 STDs, I was building a Britannic model, not a Titanic model. Any schmuck can do that. I was building a Britannic model, Titanic's sister ship that got drafted into World War I as a hospital ship. I was building a model based off that. That should tell you everything you need to know about me. Senior year, spring break, and that was my priority. Gorgeous weather outside. It's like middle of April. I am building a Titanic sister ship model. That's me in a nutshell.
Were you building it indoors or outdoors?
It was indoors. Probably
was the window open?
Shut the blinds.
Oh, okay.
No.
It was in the bunker.
Got to keep the demons out.
Now I agree with you on that one, Zach.
That's
one
a
of the most
Robism.
important
That's
things.
A classic Robism. Keep windows shut and the blinds drawn to keep the demons out.
One of the most important things you can do in your day-to-day life. Keep the demons out. And there's many ways to do it. We'll get to that on a future episode, though. What about the Titanic is interesting to you? Or what, maybe not now, but as a 5-year-old, what drew you to it? What made you want to see it that many times in succession?
Oh, God, I wish I had an answer to that. Or a definitive answer. Because it's worth noting that, like, I think, again, I've gone through this already, is that throughout my life, I've always had, I get movie obsessions. And I think in the first one was probably Toy Story. And then I want to say it had to be Titanic after that.
Okay.
And over time, it became other things. Like, I got into, like, Small Soldiers, A Bug's Life, Star Wars probably easily being the biggest one of them all. Mm-hmm. And then something like Yu-Gi-Oh! And then, and I guess I get obsessed with things. And I think it more or less can be cemented with probably Titanic and then Star Wars. And that's all I always tell people is that there was this woman that my mother was friends with when we lived in Florida, and her name was Leslie Blank. Because she doesn't have that last name anymore. I think she probably got remarried by now, or she divorced the guy she was originally married to. And my mother, it was my mother's friend at the time, and she told my mother, "Let's go see Titanic." And my mother saw Titanic 6 times in theaters because she saw it the first time with her friend, then she went every subsequent time with me. And this is the same woman that's invited us to go see Star Wars.
Oh,
so I tell my mother, I said, if it was not for this woman, I would not be the person I am today. Like, I wasn't close to her at all. Like, it wasn't like, oh, like, here's when people say, like, here's your Auntie Sally. Hello, Auntie Sally. Like, no, it was nothing like that, though. Like, this woman was, like she was kind of obnoxious. She was a know-it-all, very intelligent. And, like, she'd do, like, again, she'd just do things, and I guess it just kind of sucked me into it in a way. And so I told my mother, I said, like, certain aspects of me, you could not really pull them away from me. Like, I cannot fathom me without Star Wars. It's kind of like, that is so tied to my identity. I just can't imagine that. And I think the only other thing that's so tied to me probably is Titanic. And I to answer your question, I don't know what got me to Titanic. I think it's the idea that it's this super simplistic story. You have this large ship on its first voyage. It goes down the middle of the ocean. And then you have Jimmy C's love plot that's just the icing on the cake that anybody can appreciate, except for Rob.
I was about to say, anybody.
That anybody and everybody can appreciate except for Rob.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I accept that answer, Zach, because I think that a lot of great passion, you don't really know the origin of it. Like, the origin is sometimes clouded. It's just you're so focused on your love for it. And so that's fair. I accept that, you're just like, I don't know. It struck that chord with you. It resonated with you. And I've had similar things. I don't know if I can think of one right off the top of my head when I was a kid, like when I was really young. But, we've all been there. You see something and you get, like you said, an obsession with it. Spirited Away. That's a good example for me. I'm obsessed with that movie. Anything else you want to say about Jimmy C's movie? Because that's not what we're talking about, but I had to hit it. Okay. Yes. Good old Jimmy C's movie. That's not a Cinemoddity. It's not a late night movie. Get it out of here. I don't want to switch VHS tapes. How many DVDs is it on? Is it 3 DVDs?
It's worth noting that when they first released it on DVD, it was just one disc. And then in 2012, when Jimmy C put out the Blu-ray and the 3D Blu-ray, the Blu-ray is obviously on one disc, which I have no idea how they were able to do that. Especially, it's a really good video quality for Blu-ray. But the DVD was 2 discs.
Ooh.
And I don't get that. I don't know how you obviously the DVD transfer for that one's much better than the original 1-disc one. But I don't know how. I don't know why. I guess it's a better transfer, but if you could fit the whole thing on one Blu-ray, then why do you need 2 DVDs?
Is this somewhere we should have the X-Files music?
I don't know. Like, that's well, we don't have an answer to that. The X-Files music is when you have a convoluted answer.
Oh, so there's the Unsolved Mysteries music is what we need.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, right on. So, okay, Jimmy C's movie, let's put it to bed. Let's talk about the real movie that we got to get to. In my opinion, the real Titanic movie. Not a surprise, we are talking about Titanic Sinking the Myths. So, this was something that was shown to me by Zack. I think I mentioned at the start of this episode, I would consider this a Zack choice. And I think it's known to our audience by now that I loved it after I've seen it. And I understand a little bit more of it each time I watch it. But Zack, how many times have you seen this overall?
My history with this is every time there's a new Titanic documentary or book, I'm always interested, but I'm extremely skeptical. I was always under the notion, I still am for the most part, there's really nothing new out there about the Titanic. Unless they can ever figure out a way to raise the ship off the bottom of the ocean and actually do some sort of physical examination, a 360 examination of it, I don't think there's anything new you can really glean from it. And so I walk into every documentary being cynical.
Yes.
This was, I remember hearing about this, and it's like, oh, it's on Reel's channel. And Reel's does a bunch of, they're solid, but they do a bunch of weird things. And like, okay, this is put on. So I watch it, and as I'm watching this, I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, this thing's just like blowing my mind. Like, cue the breaking new ground sound right now. Like, that's what my brain was going through, like, every, 5 minutes. And I'm like, whoa. Because, there's one thing that's always my litmus test, whether it's a Titanic documentary or any sort of Titanic media is good, is how often it references the Californian. If it references the Californian, I usually am overall positive about it because I don't know how you can talk about the Titanic without referencing the fact that there were other ships in the general proximity of it. Mm-hmm. It's just something I don't know how you can't discuss it. And that facet for me stems from back during high school, showing more of my Titanic fan card, is that I remember going back to my senior year of high school, I was reading while everybody in class was getting high, stoned, drunk, overdosing, I was reading in the corner my Titanic conspiracy theory book. And while all the other kids are have hypodermic needles sticking out of their elbows, I'm sitting in the corner reading my little Titanic book. And the teachers would come over, and Rob probably remembers this. What was her name? Mrs. Ogden?
Oh, yeah, I remember Mrs. Ogden.
She was next to she's taught next to your mother.
Yep.
And she came over, she's like, what are you reading? I'm like, a book on the Titanic. She's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, it's a conspiracy theory on the Titanic. And she's like, what? And that was all. I loved eliciting that reaction from people. Like, you tell people about the Titanic, everyone just figures it hit an iceberg, 1,500 people died, end of story. It was a tragedy. There's really not much more to it. So when you tell people that there's a conspiratorial aspect of it, people automatically A, reject it, and B, are and then say, what was it? What was the conspiracy? Because people are all they don't buy any of it, but they're always curious as to what element it is. Yep. And that's how I really learned about the Californian. And that's why I when Sinking the Mist talked about it, I was like, okay, you have my attention now. And as we get further into this, though, is that this entire documentary, I would imagine for most people, is very controversial because it paints a pic. I guess, okay, Rob probably has to do this for me because I'm a little too far deep. I'm kind of what would be the term? I'm kind of waist deep into this. So I'm kind of wiggling around. Okay, I don't know if I can be objective here.
I think you're submerged completely, Zach. And we're talking through a radio, cups and strings right here.
Anyway, though, like I said, I don't know, but I am somebody who's always willing to subscribe to a conspiracy theory if it spins it just the right way. You don't need evidence. If you just spin it the right way, chances are I'll buy into it. And that's not to say that Sinking the Mist is conspiratorial. I think it's much more grounded and concrete and rather, I'm not sure, this might be an oxymoron, but factual conjecture. I think that's an oxymoron, but I'm going to run with it because I think all the science and the info that that's its foundation is correct. But at the same time, though, maybe the conclusions aren't exactly what they should be. At the end of the day, I do think most of the things there do make sense. There's numerous points throughout this film where it's calculating the trajectory of the flare sent out by Titanic and whether the other ships in the area were able to see them and guessing how far each of them were away. I think that's rather concrete conclusions based on evidence that might be a little shaky concerning the time that they did not have the most accurate instruments in the early 20th century. But at the same time, though, people do not want to hear anything. Again, Titanic is one of those things, kind of like a Pearl Harbor or 9/11, is such a tragedy that's understood on a global level that to say, oh, there is a seedy underbelly to it, cause people to outright reject it without hearing any evidence in either direction.
Yes. And like I said before, I love this movie. Zach, you hit on so many things in there. I love this because of kind of the same things you said. They they spun it the right way. They had a story to tell, and they knew how to tell it. And that's what I really liked about it. And from my perspective of the person who's not wildly interested in the Titanic, that's what I would want from a Titanic documentary. I'm not as so gung-ho on getting all tons of hard evidence for all these tiny little theories they're putting forward. Just give me the theories. Give me the conjecture. Give me these hypotheses, and that's what's going to make this interesting to think about. And I absolutely love that about this movie. It made me think about these things that I never would have thought of unless I had watched it, and unless I had known Zack. And that's the one that's up in the air. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm glad I watched this documentary, but is this going to balance out all the other stuff Zack has me see?
Just wait, folks. Just wait until he has to watch the children's movies series.
Oh God. One day. So yes. Zack has a huge history of the Titanic with a longer history than I do with this film. All those conspiracies and things like that. So how do we want to get into this movie with what we've said about this movie so far? What we've talked about with the Titanic. I guess I do want to say something right off the bat. This might not be in its usual spot, but I've probably already said it. This is a Cinemoddity. So I'm coming at it once again from someone who's not interested in the Titanic too much. If you make a documentary about the Titanic, over 100 years after it happened, that's a Cinemoddity as far as I'm concerned. Do you disagree with me, Zach? Because
that's one thing that's worth doing. Ever since I showed Rob this movie, one of the things he's brought up numerous times is the idea of making a Titanic documentary 100 years after the sinking, just blowing his mind.
Yes.
And yet I don't get why that is the case, because think about it. It's like saying, oh, making a documentary 100 years after the Civil War. That's just mind-blowing. It's like, as time gets further and further on, that sounds like there's like an end cap, like, it's 99 years past the event. Can't talk about it anymore. It's like kind of like Disney. Disney puts their movies out and they go back into the Disney vault for like 10 years. Rob does that with it. Instead of like Cinderella and Pinocchio, Rob does it with factual events. You have a few years to talk about it, then it goes into the vault and you can never talk about it again.
You know what? That might be accurate, because if you made me watch a documentary about the Civil War, I think I'd be equally as blown away.
So any event that's happened over 100 years ago, you cannot talk about anymore with Rob. So
I don't know if 100 is the hard cutoff. It might be like the topic. It's always like 100 plus or minus some margin, and the topic influences that margin. So like the Civil War, it's probably like 90 years. Like, you couldn't go past 90 years. And and the Titanic gets an even 100, and, things like that.
So if this was made in 2011, you would have been fine with it?
If that is actually less than 100 years, then yes. What is it, 2012? Not 2012. No. 1912, the Titanic sank in. So, yes, I would have been... That's a good question, Zach. I don't know how I would have reacted to this in 2011. Maybe I would have been baffled. Maybe my opinion would have been like, everything gets 90 years with a margin.
The goalposts change depending on how far they're away from the event.
Who knows? Who knows, Zach?
Oh, dear. But no, Rob made this comment, and it's always been baffling to me that he thinks it's weird. But I don't think it's weird at all. I think if somebody has an interesting take on something, or a novel one, I don't think there should be like a... And I think this even shows the folly of my own thinking, is that, yes, I do go into each one of these Titanic like documentaries or whatever it is with a very cynical perspective. And I think that's wrong. But at the same time, I think it was about 3 months after Sinking the Mist came out on Reels that the Smithsonian Channel had their own documentary on the Titanic, which is really weird. That all these documentaries are coming out during like the spring of 2017. Like I didn't get that. Like what was going on? I guess 105 years later. I guess that's a thing. Rob's off by only 5 years. But like I remember, like because they had a documentary, and like they were like average, like compared to like in Reels is obviously a smaller network, so they didn't put as much, didn't have as much marketing dollars behind it as like Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. But it's they advertise. I remember like I was watching Fox and Friends. And they were talking about it. And I'm like, okay, like after Sinking the Mist, like I was kind of like the Titanic flame had been rekindled. And I'm like, okay, I watch it. And like it proved everything right as to my thinking. Like these documentaries are cynical. It's like they're showing all this evidence. And it's like, and one thing, it's one of my pet peeves, and I probably said this by now, is that anytime someone, like the argument of whether the steel was of inferior nature, I hate that argument. I just hate that. Like that is such a. I don't know if it's not a straw man argument, but it's pretty close to it. So I'm going to call it that for lack of a better term. But it's just such a cheap way of making yourself sound like you know about how Titanic is. It's like the steel was of inferior quality for the time, and what does that mean? It's like it's not like today where like you hear them like it's like with the airlines. Like the airlines do everything within their power to get the plane off the ground for the least amount of money possible. Mm-hmm. Like most of the planes flying around were like manufactured in the 80s. Nobody is building new planes unless it's going to like Qatar or like Abu Dhabi. Nobody is building new planes to go from like Cincinnati to Boise, Idaho. No one is building new planes for that route. And I don't even think they have an airport in Boise. But anyway, so like when everybody brings up, and this documentary was just awful. Like they're like, did you like? And one of the things that was like a selling point, like, did you know there was a fire in the coal bunker? And I'm like, Jesus! It's like anybody who knows even slightly anything about Titanic knows about the coal bunker fire. It's like if you read one book about Titanic, that is always brought up as a major facet of the disaster. And it's like, and yes, maybe because Jimmy C didn't bring it up, and that's one thing that we probably already discussed, but I'm going to bring it up again, is that I think Jimmy C's film has created like almost like an official canon of the Titanic timeline, where like if it didn't occur in that film, people won't believe it happened. And I think that's an issue. And even though Jimmy C's film gets things right, like there's one Titanic documentary that was done within the 100 years of the sinking, so it's not a Cinemodity. It falls right under the gate.
Okay, good.
And so, and somebody, Jimmy C brings it up to his panel of experts. I believe two of them were actually in Sinking the Myths, Ken Marshall and Park Stevenson. And Jimmy C asked them and says, if I'm reshooting the movie right now to make it more historically accurate, what would I change? And obviously, the full segment's not in the documentary. Obviously, it was cut down for time and content, probably time. And one of the experts, I think it was Ken Marshall, who's the painter, says at one point the ship was listing to one side as it was sinking. And Jimmy C's like, well, I'm going to go spend their $60 million to show the ship listing as it's sinking. I'm like, you're the one who asked. It's like, you don't need to make fun of someone for giving you evidence if you're asking a question. But no, I think that's what's happened. Like Rob said, even though Titanic, he disagrees, I think it's a great film. I think it's created almost like a detriment to the history of the actual event, where people are just so hypnotized or just so mesmerized by that fictitious account, despite it being so accurate, probably more so than any other film probably could ever hope to be. I know for the 2012 cut, Jimmy C went back and actually digitally altered the stars in the sky because they did not reflect where they an astronomer told him that's not where certain constellations would have been during April of 1912. So he went back and re-edited or altered the star pattern of certain stars. Jimmy C cares, but again, you can't expect him to constantly be updating the film. But at the same time, there's so many people that just, again, for the same amount of people that are Titanic deniers, there are people that think Jack and Rose are real.
Yep.
So to answer your question, Rob, sure. I don't know what you asked. I forget at this point, but yes.
I don't think I remember either. Okay. But yes is a good answer. I often like that answer, Zach. So I'll keep that yes in my back pocket for later use. So Titanic Sinking the Myths, it gets a lot of controversy, or people see it as very controversial. Like we talked about before, there are people who really care about the Titanic. As baffling as I find that in this day and age, it has as common as Zach finds it. This was somewhat of would you say that this movie was a hot take in and of itself?
Oh yeah, this is hot. If there ever was a definition of a Titanic hot take, it's this movie. Okay,
yes, but I loved it. I went into it with a good deal of skepticism as well. It's not like I think everything they said is, the truth now, but it was good. It presented in a great way. Of course, it's a docudrama. So it's full of information and people talking to a camera, but there is that dramatized element. And that deserves some attention, Zach, the drama that goes on in this film. And I would say the most drama comes from one character. One character carries so much drama in this movie. And it is Diana Bristow's publicist. Is it the publicist? Is he the...
I guess it's her agent.
Agent, publicist, I don't understand it, because the first scene we see him in, we get an exterior shot of a house, and the location card says Diana Bristow's bed and breakfast. That's what it says, and then it's just this guy sitting at a desk, the publicist or the agent, talking on the phone with Diana, and they're having their discussion about, she's like, I'm going to finish this interview. And when he hears her say that, he goes something like, okay, you do that, okay.
Okay, all right, bye-bye.
Okay, and he starts basically jumping around and, he's sitting down, but he's basically bumbling around and just exacerbated, and he slams the phone down and he sighs, and he looks at his watch real quick and he sighs again, and that's the end of the scene. And it is done fantastically, Zach. So much emotion in that character. Did that stand out to you in this film?
No, it did not. I know. I know. I know the agent has a great scene at the end where he's like sitting next to like a pool and he's like on the patio. That's great. Like when you think of like Hollywood agent, that's what you think of. Again, I like that.
Yes,
he's always sighing like a breath of relief. He's like,
oh yeah,
he's exasperated. No matter what scene he's in, he's exasperated.
The second time we see him is when he's on that patio. I think he's like doing something. He's like either barbecuing or he's next to a grill, so it makes it seem like he's barbecuing.
Yeah, it's like morning.
Yeah, it's a very different scene from when it's at night and he's talking to her while he's in the office. And when I watch this film, every single time I watch this docudrama, I hope that he's gonna sigh, hang up the phone, and look at his watch while he's on the patio. I want him to look at his watch again, Zach. It would be perfect. But sadly, that does not happen. So that would be probably my one criticism for this movie, is that they should stick with the running gag of the agent looking at his watch in whatever situation he finds himself in. That was probably my favorite character.
Your favorite character in the entire docudrama?
That's probably my favorite character, yes. Did you have a favorite character?
I don't know. I feel like there's one that I should be saying, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I thought you were going to say like the iceberg or something like that.
No, the iceberg doesn't have a role in this.
That's a good point. The ship, you could say the ship is your favorite character.
No, I don't think the ship is even the character. That's one. It's worth noting that like people always use that. It's kind of like an archaic term, but like, oh, the setting's its own character. Like in Jimmy C's film, the Titanic is its own. I do think the ship is a character in and of itself because there's so many glam shots of the ship, because obviously it was a very expensive special effect and practical effect. But I do think that like in this, like I said, I think it's more the as I've been established. I am the snack master, the connoisseur of context, the Lego maniac.
God damn it.
I am all these things, though. And I think it's the context of the story that's probably the most interesting element of this film. Because as Rob stated, is that this is a very dense film.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot going on. I think when it comes to Titanic documentaries, you have entry level, intermediate, and you have advanced. This is clearly in the advanced category. Like usually for most Titanic things, it's like half of the thing is, don't you feel bad for the poor people in steerage? Like any Titanic documentary, Jimmy C's film included, half of it is just looking at the socio-economic element of it. This film says, nope, we are not going to talk about that. And it doesn't even really reference it to any sort of serious capacity. Like it's here and there because you can't talk about the Titanic without mentioning it to some degree. Mm-hmm. But it does not concern itself with it, which is good because that's all anybody can ever talk about is the poor people in steerage. And this film says, no, we're going to talk again, but it takes it takes the same message, I think, but a different perspective on it. Instead of, look, can you believe they didn't have enough lifeboats? Can you believe that they sat there, left a lot of these people gated up in steerage? It says, wait, why did this ship, what were the events behind this ship even getting built? What was going on behind the multi-millionaire financiers, J.P. Morgan, which most people I think aren't even aware of the fact that the ship was owned essentially by an American.
I didn't know that. That was one of my favorite aspects of the documentary parts of this movie was that it got into the finances and it got into that like lead up to what made the Titanic exist, and that was really cool.
And that's an aspect of the Titanic story that nobody ever wants to talk about. A, because I think most people are ignorant of it, and B, most people don't think that's interesting. And I think that's why this thing kind of falls into the advanced documentary category, because it's something that it's like, okay. And I give the film a lot of credit for explaining this because like you can't just say, oh, J.P. Morgan owned the Titanic. And it's like, oh, like what? It's like, who's JP? It's like, and like most people don't know who a lot of dumb kids these days don't know what the Titanic is. So how do you okay? Who's JP Morgan? Well, he was one of the wealthiest men on the planet in the late 19th century, early 20th century. He has fingers in a little bit of everything. And it's like, oh, so what was he trying to do with this? And obviously, you can't talk about what was called British shipbuilding in the early 20th century without talking about the fact that Europe was on the brink of war again. Yeah. Which is it's not a through line, but it's bookended with that information. The fact that J.P. Morgan was going around, and the reason why that trying to buy all different ocean liners in all these respective countries were saying no, and that's one thing that used to happen a lot during these wars in Europe, was that in times of war they would just commandeer all the private ocean liners and all the other things like that. And so this film spends at least, what would you say, a solid 10 minutes just getting into the history of White Star Line finances.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know how long it is, because it's so interesting to me. Like, that's what I care about. That's what I love to learn about. And it's awesome that, they really do give it the attention it deserves. And this is the first I'm hearing that, this isn't really focused on in a lot of Titanic stuff. So that makes me enjoy this even more, that they're looking at those, kind of underappreciated or underfocused on aspects.
And that's what I think it is, because a lot of this stuff is, again, J.P. Morgan's finances and his business dealings. A lot of that is ironclad. You really can't argue with it. And I think one of the detriment, this is where I think this film could be almost split up into two. You probably could do, again, at this point, who knows what information Ryan's given us, but you probably could split this into two separate 2-hour documentaries where you spend one part of it discussing the backstory behind all the ships, the stuff that's in concrete factually, and then the stuff about what happened during the sinking. And then you have the other part of it, which is the more human element, which is with William Mueller. And you have that where that's the stuff where people, again, Rob and I, we discussed before we started recording, you go online and this movie has legitimate haters. Yep. It's there are people are seething with hatred over this movie, and I can't figure out why. And I think, and yet every time somebody argues with something about this movie, they always point to the Bill Mueller stuff and say, "See, you can't believe any of it." And it's well, Bill Mueller's not saying anything about J.P. Morgan. He's not saying J.P. Morgan went to the Cunard line and he's not saying that. That stuff you can trace back without his involvement. And yet he's the element of this that people point at and say, see, this disqualifies it because there's no official record of him on the ship.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm repeating myself here, but that I gotta give pushback. That's what I've been finding is in my own research is the biggest criticism to not just this movie, but the work or the research of Bristow, even back in the day, is that there's no record of this person being on the Titanic. Is that a good way to summarize it? That's one of the main complaints.
I would say that's probably the sole complaint. Everything branches away from that.
So, people, haters, complainers, I'm talking to you. This was before the invention of the computer. We are people. We are bad at record keeping today, and we were bad at record keeping then, and we will continue to be bad at record keeping for the existence of our species. I'm not saying that I believe this guy Mueller was on the Titanic, but I'm saying that you are a fool if you think it's just impossible. If you do not want to entertain the idea that there might not been one name recorded by a person writing names down, you have to understand that's a possibility in the goddamn early 1900s. Once again, I'm not saying I believe this, but you can't say for a fact. And that's what bothers me. I hate the criticism that's just no, this is clearly false because I think it's stupid. That is a terrible logical argument.
Yeah, I think, and the problem is that you don't mind people pushing or giving a little bit of pushback on things like this, but it's just immediate disqualification of everything.
Exactly.
To repeat one of our social studies teacher's favorite terms, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You also can't say the word gypped either, but that's a story for another day. That's not the time for this. But no, I think that's what a lot of people this film gives a new perspective on the Titanic. And just because you might disagree with certain elements of it, you can't. And I think that's where a lot of the haters come from. Is okay, Diana Bristow is the focal point of all this research that nobody ever discusses or talks about. Mm-hmm. And she went to Bill Mueller. And so people figure, oh, if she trusted him, and we've already decided, us being the haters, that this guy is unqualified of any sort of opinion on this. So if she put her faith in him, then obviously she's just as bad as he is. And everything she ever touched is just as bad.
Yes.
And I think, and that's the folly of the haters. Instead of dissecting this and going through it line item by line item, figuring, okay, there's certain aspects of this make sense, other ones don't. And like Rob said, we can't believe Bill Mueller 100%. There isn't, again, there is no concrete evidence that he was there other than his word and a couple of here and there information that could be construed one way or the other. But at the same time, though, just to completely disqualify his opinion, I think is wrong. And like I stated, like, if you love the Titanic, if you love, like, it's kind of the idea of, like, if you just love sitting in your bubble with your one perspective on Titanic, it's going to get real boring being a fan or a enthusiast of Titanic, because there's going to be nothing new to talk about. It's just you repeating the same things over and over again. But if you introduce new perspectives into it, and much like me with my conspiracy theory book, and discuss the conspiracy theory. That was the conspiracy was not the sinking a miss one, which is with the whole idea of the Titanic and the whole thing with Bruce Ismay. It was about how the Titanic and the Olympic were switched because the Olympic had an accident. They wanted to deliberately sink it for insurance fraud.
Oh,
that's a story for another day. I know. Again, Ryan's already discussed this, but he did not. He does not like that conspiracy at all.
Okay, we got to get that guy on next.
Oh yes, he didn't make a movie though, so that's gonna be a little bit difficult. We got to branch out Cinemodities into books.
Yeah, we'll call it a visual book, and the visual aspect is that you have to look at it to read it. That makes it cinematic.
Makes it. Oh God. But no. So I guess that's just one aspect of this thing. But on top of the fact that you have all these different elements of I don't know, because I don't think is the word conspiracy ever said during this.
Oh, I don't think so. I think only things like controversial, maybe.
Yes, controversial.
Or things where they say like they'll give one stance on something and then they'll talk about more recent evidence or more recent opinion on something. But no, I don't think they ever use conspiracy at all. No, I don't believe so.
No. I think maybe once conspiracy is used, and I think it's to talk about how Ismay didn't want to call the Frankfurt to help. I think that might be the only time that's used as conspiracy, because that would be more of a conspiracy, not a conspiracy in the sense of the theories they're presenting, but a conspiracy as to what he'd be trying to do by the negligence I guess the fact that he's trying to, again, that would be negligence, that if there was a closer ship, he deliberately chose not to use them because they were part of a the same country that the ship was registered to, the Germans versus the British.
Okay.
So, like I said, yes, that's one aspect of this. It is controversial, I guess, because that's the thing that's worth noting, though. It's one thing. I guess this also goes to the framing of the film, in that like people will watch like insane conspiratorial nonsense all the time, whether it be like JFK or 9/11 or this.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's that textbook or that encyclopedic image of the guy from Ancient Aliens with like his hair all poofed up, and it's the freeze frame of him like with his chin slightly ajar, his mouth open. It's like aliens. And I think if you frame anything with conspiracy, people will be like, okay, I'm gonna watch this because this is like the equivalent of eating fluff. It's nonsense. Yeah. And I think this documentary has no parts of that. Like, at no point does it hedge its bets and say, it gives you one perspective, one sole perspective, and it rides it for 88 minutes. Yeah,
I think that's to its benefit. I think that's a really interesting idea of it. You know, they're not pointing out all of the details behind and kind of some of the uncertainties maybe, or some of the research there that's still going on. But, you know, like we said, it's a docudrama, and so we have some story to tie us through it, and they do a good job of presenting their stance and sticking through it and following, you know, the story of the Titanic as it goes through and before it hits the iceberg, when it hits the iceberg, when it sinks, all that type of stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. Can I bring up my favorite line, Zach?
Does it involve ham?
It does not involve ham. Are you upset? Are you
A
disappointed?
little bit.
A little bit? Well, I guess that's like my favorite line of the version I watched. Because the ham line is not in the movie. It's a commercial.
That's your cut of the film. You got a very specific cut of the film.
Yeah, I have a very
the ham
interesting
subplot.
This ham is great.
I have the ham cut of the film. But out of the lines that are actually spoken in the film, there's a few that I really like. Some of them because they're said in a rather strange way, like the person they interview is either really monotone, like the guy talking about the Marconi and the Telefunken radio people. He's like, the Marconi people thought everybody should use the Marconi system, and the Telefunken people thought everybody should use the Telefunken system. And he like has these weird jumps in it, and it's like,
and the Telefunken people thought that everybody in the world should use Telefunken, and the Marconi people thought that everybody in the world should have Marconi.
Are you confused about what you're saying? Like, why is this difficult to say? So things like that. There's the one guy who looks like he's frowning constantly at the beginning of the movie. He talks about like the Germans and stuff like that. I didn't write his name down, unfortunately. Does this ring a bell?
No, not in the slightest.
Oh man, there's a guy, he like a museum researcher or something, and he just has a constant frown on his face. But no, my favorite line in the whole movie comes from Ken Marshall, and he says that the Titanic looked like a sagging birthday cake.
Titanic definitely looked sick. It looked like a sagging birthday cake to survivors in the lifeboats.
Okay, what is this? What the hell does this mean? Birthday cakes, as I am imagining, are either round or rectangular. Okay? So the Titanic, I've always pictured, you get, as it's sinking, you kind of got that profile view. So you're just seeing like a long ship. You're not seeing any of its kind of width or anything like that. And what does it mean for a birthday cake to sag? Like, that's different from melt, I think. Like what does this mean to you, Zach? I'm so confused by this.
Oh God. I know Rob likes the idea of the minus the ham. Rob loved the idea of the cake line. I don't know, because as I rewatched it, since Rob noticed that one quote, it's I guess the idea is that you do see this thing and it looks like it's, I don't know. I really just don't have an answer to it. It's just I don't know what a cake would look like under that sort of pressure or stress.
Yeah,
I doubt few would. I get the idea. I get that maybe it just meant to say that the Titanic was in rough shape, just kind of like how it looked a little bit. Obviously, seeing a ship with only part of itself stick. Maybe like the idea of like the flagpole and the crow's nest were kind of sticking up, kind of like candles, kind of like that. They're kind of like singing below the ocean waves, and you see part of it. Again, like obviously, I would imagine that. And plus, it's worth noting that when the Titanic sank, most ships, as they're sinking, capsize. Because obviously, and that is a focal point of the film, too, is the fact how the ships, like, no one ever talks about the fact how the ship sunk. Because if a ship gets dinged along one side, whether it be from like a torpedo or like the Costa Concordia, where it was like torn by a reef or a
giant spider.
Well, that's something. The spider does damage from the top, not from the bottom. And so most ships capsize. So it's extremely rare for a ship to go down, face first. I guess that would be the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's the best way to describe it because it's such a surreal image.
Okay.
I guess a surreal image warrants a surreal analogy.
You don't think this is like a colloquialism that we're just not familiar with? Like somewhere in the world, people talking about sinking things are like, that's a sagging birthday cake. I didn't Google it or anything, so I don't know for sure. I didn't do any research into that phrase.
That's like I said, I don't have an answer to that. I get it. It's kind of one of those things where if I squint really hard at it, I can kind of make sense of it.
But if you squint at the sagging cake, you see the Titanic, or if you squint at the Titanic, you see the sagging cake.
Well, I can only answer one of those. I can't answer the other.
Oh man. So okay, what about this? So the Titanic had like I don't know, what are they, like steam vents, like the big pillars that release the smoke, right? Like the exhaust. Smokestack. Oh, of course. How could I not remember that? So what about this? Let's say you're looking at the Titanic from like...
We're still going with this?
Yes, I'm investigating the sagging birthday cake thing. I had an idea. And so let's say you're looking at the Titanic, not like directly on the water line, but you're a little up. Like you're at like maybe like a 30-degree angle up and you're looking at it. And so as it's sinking, one smokestack is lower than the other. Okay?
Okay. So
now, imagine you're looking at a birthday cake from a similar position. Like you're not level with the cake, you're a little above it. I guess imagine you're standing in front of a birthday cake. Because birthday cakes aren't as big as the Titanic. And then imagine there's 2 candles on it. And then like the frosting on one side starts to melt, and that candle starts to it starts to droop closer towards you. Even better, maybe the cake is on display, like the cake is tilted up a little bit, and one of the candles or one of the decorations is like sagging downward, and it looks a little lower. And from that perspective, you can have the difference in the smokestacks. I might have just talked myself into believing that the Titanic looked like a sagging birthday cake. Did I do that? Did I do it to you, Zach?
I'd like to apologize to any Titanic enthusiasts or survivors or descendants of survivors. As someone who's loved the Titanic for over 20 years, this is extremely blasphemous. I don't condone it. I'm gonna let Rob go down with the sagging birthday cake all by his lonesome.
I think I cracked it. I think I figured it out. We need Ken Marshall on here for an episode dedicated to that. The analysis of that quote, yes.
Oh my God, this is I am so embarrassed. I am so. I hope you're happy, sir. I don't condone any of this. That was. I don't understand why Zach's embarrassed. That was some good logical deduction to understand a quote that doesn't make sense. That's what it's all about. I kind of wish we focused on the ham commercial break in the middle of the program.
That's not in the movie. That's not part of the movie.
This ham is great.
Oh, yeah, so that's my favorite line. It's even more my favorite line now that I've understood it a little better. Maybe as we keep talking and in the months to come, I'll understand a little more. I'll keep you in the loop, Zach. I'll let you know what I think. Okay?
Are you going to explain this away kind of like the droids in Star Wars having their own language? You make a computer language or do a computer program that...
to analyze a phrase?
Yes.
I'm tempted now that you mention it. I'm tempted. We'll have to do a big episode on Rob's machine learning updates. That'll be great. Our audience will love that, right? All the film buffs and all the Titanic enthusiasts and our parents. We're going to lose all of them. Do we really want to talk about the commercials in this cut?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Because if we're going to talk about the ham commercial, we got to talk about the Leonard Maltin commercial. Because he was in Gremlins, and that would be a great connection.
Norris, this is like the Dean Norris tangent. That's how we're going to tie him into all this.
I mean, yeah, that would be the way to do it.
Well, to be fair, I don't know if he might not have a show on Reels anymore. I don't think he does. I think it's worth noting, too, is the fact this movie is based off, I think it's the first, how many documentaries are based off a book?
Oh, that is a good point. So really, that's kind of the setting for the drama part of this. Well, when they're not on the actual Titanic, it's kind of the research of the author of that book, Bristow. And yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think of, when do you have a documentary based on a book? I don't know. I can't think of anything.
And it's also worth noting, too, that it's also a documentary based on a book that is not available. Period. It's like, think about you have a lot of documentaries, you have like movies that are like based on books, and the book is like always available. It's the movie's essentially an advertisement for the book. Mm-hmm. It's like, buy my book. And with this, like people, I know, like I remember after I watched the movie and I saw the book, I wanted a copy. You go to Amazon, there's a product listing, but there's absolutely no information, like on how to get. It's like no sellers. You type it into Google, and you get a couple of listings. You get like all the Amazon listings like across the globe. Like do you want Spain Amazon's listing of the book? and you go on. I remember doing research at the time, and I was looking through trying to find somebody actually. I gotta see if I can pull it up right now. But I remember at the time looking, and somebody actually had a website like discussing all the Titanic books that had been written up to that time. I think it maybe the website finally stopped. I think whoever was updating the website stopped in, I think, 2005, I want to say. And this person had like all the books like listed, not just Diana Bristow's, but like every Titanic book at that point that was written, like how rare it was, like what was the likelihood of like this, like why you should pick it up, all these things. Oh, I'm trying to see if I can find.
Oh, that's cool. That's a neat feature or a neat aggregator for that stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where it could be though. I don't have bookmarks. I can't imagine me deleting that as a bookmark.
Zach is always getting on me for doing mental gymnastics. Imagine what his organization is like. Talk about mental gymnastics.
Human beings are horrible at record keeping. Case in point, right here.
Yeah, Zach. I don't know. Like, where would you look? You know, Zach is like, it's a website, so it might be under W. About the Titanic, so it might be under T. Well, a website I could call a site one day. It might be under S.
That was well paid. That was well played. That really was well played on your part, sir.
So I have not read the book. As Zach is doing whatever the hell he's trying to do. I have not read the book. I am of the same kind of idea as Zach, though, that once I saw this documentary, I would love to read the book. I would love to get kind of that more of the source information, as it really kind of is, you know. Do you know if there's the drama stuff in the book as well, or is it really just straight research-oriented or, you know, interview fact-oriented type of stuff?
Again, I had the book. I have not read it in its entirety. It's much more, it's much more, it's like a textbook almost. I don't think there's it's a reference material. Yeah, it's not meant to, it weaves a story, obviously, the story of the Titanic, but I do not think there might be certain subplots about it. Maybe it's like, oh, during this, maybe, but I don't think so. Not in the way the movie is. The movie, it's not like that.
Okay. So if I wanted to read this book, if I wanted to read it so bad that I wanted to get my own copy, how hard would it be to get my own copy, Zach?
You'd have to get very lucky checking websites about it, checking different, I guess, Amazon, eBay, things like that. I guess
what do you think about like a local bookstore? You think I'd ever get lucky, or you think it's that rare where like the copies that are out there, people have them?
You'd have to be really lucky, I think.
Okay.
I think you'd have to be. I really think again. As somebody who went nuts looking for it, I think you'd have to, because I went nuts looking for this and couldn't find it anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I got lucky because I just constantly kept religiously checking Amazon like once an hour for like 3 or 4 months straight.
Oh God. No, I think, you know, next time I see Zach in person, I will incapacitate him in some way, and I will read the book, and maybe I'll give it back. We'll see how that goes. See if Zach behaves while he's incapacitated. What else can I talk about? As Zach is searching.
Whatever. I've given up.
Now that we have many more hours until we do our next recording, you can spend all that time searching for the website.
Gotta find that goddamn website. It's making me angry now. It was a good website too. It had a lot of information on it.
It was the best. No. I'm sure it was the best website, Zach.
It was the best website. But no, going back to Titanic Sinking the Myths, I think it's a fantastic documentary, but I do not think it's entry level. I cannot outside of Rob, I cannot imagine giving this to somebody as their really first piece of Titanic information. I think only like much how I wanted Rob to respond to Men, Women, and Children by throwing him into the deep end. I did this with him here, and he appreciated it. I don't think I could do this to somebody else that does not have a decent background with the historical facts of the sinking. Or the ship
Yes.
in general.
Yes, that's a good point. I think we've hit that a few times now on this show, on this podcast. I am not an exemplar. I am a unique case for my reaction to a lot of things. And so Zack giving me a Titanic documentary, at first it blew my mind, and then it blew my mind again when I realized how dense it was, and it was causing me to learn. And that's what I want when I sit down to watch something, to take something in. You know, I want to learn. I always love to learn. There's other stuff I want, but kind of top priority. You show me something that I'm going to learn from, I'm going to like it. So it fit the bill perfectly, Zack. Good old Titanic. We'll have to do an anniversary episode in 100 years. What do you think? We'll review this episode of our review. 101 years, maybe.
101 years?
Yes. Just to make it absurd.
Dear. All right, Rob. So, are we going to eat a snack during this movie?
You have to. You have to eat a snack during this movie. What snack?
I know. Okay, ha ha ha. Sunken birthday cake. Ha ha ha. Okay. Well, I choose my sunken.
I would say that you should eat the quietest brain food you can find, because you need brain food. You need something that's going to, keep your attention, keep you alert. That's what I mean by brain food, I guess I should say. I don't mean like you eat food and it makes you smarter or able to retain information better, but like, you should be eating something for you that's going to keep you alert to what you're watching, but it has to be quiet. Like, this movie's so dense and there's so much going on, you can't be distracted by a crunchy food or anything that, it can't be distracting. You can't have like a plate of food that you have to look down at. Like, you have to be focused on this movie, Zack. So brain food that's quiet and not distracting. That's what I would say. For me, an example for me, that would be chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are pretty quiet, and if you can't eat chicken nuggets without looking at them, I don't know. I don't know what to say to you, to be honest.
But not chicken cutlet parmesan.
Chicken cutlet parmesan, no, that's a completely different thing. That's a completely different entity, Zack.
Okay, I just gotta make sure. Okay, well, this is what I pick. I'm gonna have to describe this because I don't think. Oh God, it might not do it justice to describe it. Imagine a water, much like a recreation of the Titanic, with fruit, watermelon, and cheese cubes.
Oh my, that would be awesome. That would be awesome just to have, like, for a party or something. Okay, that one sucks. Zack's showing me a picture, and I imagined something cool, and Zack showed me, like, something terrible. Did you make that, Zack? I'm sorry if I'm offending you. I hope this is just a Google image. If you made this, it's bad.
I think this is offensive in and of itself. It's like, imagine making like a 9/11 like nacho dish or something. This is kind of like the equivalent of it. I feel like this is disrespectful. You know what? I take it back.
Oh man. So
they actually, just for people to know at home, I have a picture. I'll put it in the show notes. It's a watermelon. No, I'm gonna let Rob describe it. Rob, please describe the image to our audience.
So I would say this is like a watermelon cut. It's not even in half. It's like they cut the top quarter of it off.
Yeah.
Long ways. And I'm guessing they hollowed it out a little bit, or they cut out the watermelon and cubed it up. But then they got on this watermelon. They got, little, I don't know, what did they peel it a little bit to make it look like windows? The watermelon's supposed to be the hull of the ship.
I don't think they peeled it. Well, look, they took Sharpie and they drew little rectangles to make it look like portholes. But
did they write Titanic on the end of it?
Very crudely on the back of the watermelon in Sharpie's written the word Titanic.
Jesus. And then sticking out of the rind of the watermelon, the cut open part, is like toothpicks with, I don't know, I guess more watermelon, or
I think it's supposed to be that or honeydew, maybe?
Maybe honeydew. To act as the guard railing. It looks like the guard railing. Yeah. And then the whole thing's at an angle like the Titanic sinking. And I guess I should point out the one smokestack that we get to see in this rendition is a zucchini. It looks a zucchini or eggplant. Oh, no, it can't be eggplant.
It has to be zucchini.
Solid.
Or cucumber. Or a cucumber.
It could be a fucking thick fucking cucumber. Holy shit. That would be a thick cucumber, Zack. Oh my god. I love cucumber. I would love to have a cucumber that thick. And then there's just a bunch of fruit. What is the fruit supposed to represent? The people falling into the water and dying?
I think they gave up on recreating the ship at that point.
Because then it's just fruit. So everything is piled. Fruit is just piled against this. And it's on a very sad, like, plastic plate.
Is it supposed to be cheese or pineapple?
That looks like pineapple to me.
Okay.
Definitely. Here's what I had in my head when you explained this to me, Zach. So that's like, you ever see those memes where it's like, this is what it looks like on Pinterest, and this is what I did, and it's terrible. Nailed it, you know? Like, that's like the user attempt. Like, what I'm imagining is that we can make an actually really cool, detailed, edible Titanic. Like, I'm not talking any grand scale, like you need that wooden board that they bring, like, the giant hoagies in for parties on. But, you know, something that could fit on a table very nicely. Maybe it is the size of a watermelon and you do some carving, but don't make it crude like that. Give it some detail. You know, maybe do some little carvings on some carrots to make it look like aspects of the ship or people or something like that. Or maybe not carrots or something else. I don't know. I'm not a food artist. We should do this, Zach. What do you think?
No, this is a horrible idea.
Why? People would love that.
No.
And then we would eat it.
I feel like this is like disrespectful in the worst way possible. Like, imagine making like a waffle tower, but it's like the World Trade Center. Like, that's what I feel like. This is like disrespect. Who would do this?
People who need a snack while they're watching movies about the Titanic.
Oh my God, you type in Titanic cake and the amount of results is unsettling. Okay. Oh my God, there's one actually of the ship sinking in two. Oh my God, this is offensive. Oh my God, like I am getting upset.
What if you type in 9/11 cake? Do you scan it?
I don't want to even do that.
Zach is like, there's no level of incognito mode that will protect you.
Yes. Oh my God, this is like sick. Is this the dark web? Is this the dark web everybody's talking about?
That is a good point. That we're observing that currently we have hit. It's been long enough since the Titanic that it's okay to make food in remembrance of it. We've hit that point. Do you think that 20 years it took them to do Titanic food or something, you think?
Not long enough.
Not long enough. See, that's, Zach, that's the same thing as my threshold for something being mind-blowing. Is like the food thing. You think that's offensive. Like, it's the same thing, Zach. We're crazy in our way.
Who would make a cake of that? Well, I'll make a cake of the Chernobyl power plant. It's like who would want that? Like, seriously, who would want to eat that?
Could you imagine making like an elephant's foot cake? You just have to fucking throw batter on the pan and cook it. Like, that would be the easiest cake. The Chernobyl disaster cake. Zach, you've turned me on to a very interesting subset of the culinary community. I'm now interested in cakes being
shaped like tragedies.
Tragedies and kind of weird events and things like that. I'm interested now. I have to do some research. I'll get back to you on this, Zach. I'll get back to you.
Please don't. Please don't.
I'll find a good documentary we can talk about on the show about this.
Oh my God. All right.
I'll Rob, make the documentary.
All right, to get off this horrible topic, is this a late night movie?
So I'm glad you asked me this, Zach, because I do have an answer. We have talked about before on this podcast the phrase "your suffering will be legendary," and we've talked about this. And when you show someone something, in some cases, that's what you're looking for from a certain movie. It's so bad that you want these people to be like, "Oh my God." I do not feel this way about this movie, Titanic Sinking the Myths. I really like this movie. I'm going to keep watching it because it's like a Russian nesting doll. I keep figuring out more stuff the more I listen to it. But I can bet you anything, if I put this on for people I know late at night, they're going to hate me. And if they don't hate me immediately and they actually watch it, their suffering will be legendary. I don't think that's a feature of this movie. I think that's a feature of the people I know and I'm thinking of I would show this movie to. They would be like, who gives a fuck? And they would not enjoy this. So for that reason, I would say this is not a late night movie. This is like a singular late night movie or an isolation late night movie. If you're into obscure documentaries or Titanic documentaries, check it out at 1 a.m. It'll do you good. What do you think? Would you show this to your late night cohort?
You mean my Star Wars action figures?
Yes, and the Titanic memorabilia. I'm sure you have with them, or models and stuff like that.
I don't think so. Not because for a lack of quality, but like you said, I think it had to be someone that's really into Titanic, or someone like Rob that just likes things that are just so not nuanced. Mm-hmm. They're just like so like fucking like, oh god, waist deep in the Titanic lore.
Yes, yeah, yes. That, or I guess I would put the one caveat. If I ever meet someone who has as much energy as I do in the middle of the night, I would be tempted to play this movie for them. I haven't met anyone like that, but I think that's a big part of it. When you are late at night and you're thinking of going to bed and you're trying to ramp up, or I guess ramp down to that, you don't want to learn. I've noticed that from a lot of people. You don't want to watch something that you need focus for. You'd want something that you can, just get some visual stimulation from or something like that. So, unfortunately, I don't think it's a late night movie. So we're saying no?
No.
Okay. But it is a cinemoddity. It'll always be a cinemoddity to me. Okay. I do have one more thing I'd like to pitch to you, Zach. In our Batman versus Superman episode, Zach brought up the story of how the Jimmy C. Titanic movie was pitched. And it was James Cameron had the big painting of the Titanic. He put it on the board and he said, I want to do Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. And they gave him a bunch of money. Was that the gist of it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Zach, so I have an idea. And the only thing I'm missing is the picture. So here we go. I want a picture. I want to go into the boardroom of somewhere, and I want to go, Joan of Arc, but underground. What picture do I need to sell that?
What?
Well, so Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. That's a vacuous idea. That could mean a million things. Joan of Arc underground. It could also mean a million things. People know the Joan of Arc story, and underground is a space. It's a location. Let's do it. But what picture? What picture do I sell this with?
I think all right. There's so many things wrong with that that understanding of the James Cameron picks that not worth going into. This is Cinemodities late night movies after dark. This is.
Think about it. You think about this pic. We need a picture to pitch for the Joan of Arc underground. We need this. We need the visual selling point. That's what we're missing.
You know what? I've heard a lot. Rob's spouted a lot of crazy nonsense on this podcast. He might have just topped himself, folks.
Oh man, Zach's gonna be jealous. Like 20 years, it's gonna be Joan of Arc Underground, the movie, and it's gonna be incredibly successful.
And I didn't get on the ground floor of this brilliant idea.
Yes, Zach's gonna be the original hater, and that's gonna be there's gonna be two podcasts. We're gonna have to split for our divisiveness. How do we end an episode? Not necessarily this episode. How do we end episodes ever? Like, have we even ended any episode ever before? Aren't they all just still going?
It definitely feels that way sometimes.
So what do you think? Any ideas? Do we have the sad flute version? Let's check it out.
Let's check it out.
This ham is great.